Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Dave Tree.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks. This is episode 18. I'm your co-host, Mark Newbold, and joining me on the show today, if Indiana Jones had a list of bad dates, this man would not be on it. Please introduce yourself to our massive audience, please.
Hi everyone, it's Dave from All the Cool Stuff. I think that's probably my favourite ever intro that you've ever done there, Mark.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how can you not love a John Rhys Davies kind of like tribute like that?
True.
That is great. And I tell you what, I never realised that was Kieran Sire, the little kid.
Yeah.
Like doing the dates. I always thought that was genuinely a little kid, but now I know. It's like, no, that guy's like in his 30s or 40s or whatever. Strange. You need a stuntman for that, but maybe they really were poison dates.
If he came up to me with a tray of vol-au-vents, I'm not entirely sure that I would accept them.
Yeah, you would.
Just to be careful. I probably would. I've got a strong constitution. So how are things with you? I know I'm queuing up an obvious question here. I know life has been very busy for you. What's been going on, Dave?
It's been back-to-back events, so apologies to everyone. I know you've all been waiting with bated breath for the next episode of Making Tracks, but I have been on the road. It's been one show after the next. During the week, we run All the Cool Stuff as the toy shop, and then on weekends I'm away somewhere. It was London Film and Comic Con, then it was Cardiff Comic Con, then last weekend was Bournemouth Film and Comic Con, so relatively local to where I am. This weekend I'm off to Weymouth. Weekend after that I'm in Bristol. So it's like literally from where it's been so quiet, all of a sudden all hands at the deck, all going crazy. So I'm just literally going backwards and forwards. So that been a bit stir crazy, but been a lot of fun as well. Got to meet quite a few other sort of like fans of Fantha Tracks at all the events and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been pretty good. What about on your side, Mark?
Similar, really. I think as we're sort of gearing up for Celebration, so it's getting all the final bits of that sorted out. The writing's going well, the website's really going well, and everything's ticking over there. So we've got lots to talk about, obviously, on this episode in relation to Fantha Tracks. It's good, but like you say, it's been really, really busy. We've had episodes from Capital Sci-Fi, so we had content coming from there. Andy Lith, who's one of our newer team members who does a lot of hosting of events and panels, has got some stuff from Carlisle Comic Con, so we've got some content coming from that over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it's been busy, and I'm really glad that we're finally sitting down and talking. This episode, Making Tracks, episode 18, is a big return of Mark and Dave. We're going to talk about our Celebration memories, because Celebration is literally around the corner. We will have one episode out before then, so we will be giving all the information about what we're doing then. Yeah, I'm sure other nonsense will come along as we keep talking.
If there's one thing you get for your money on this podcast, it's a lot of nonsense. If you don't feel there's enough nonsense, then we'll give you a refund.
Yeah, you're at the wrong podcast.
Fantha Tracks.
We've got Celebration Chicago coming up. When you look back over Celebrations past, and I know for me, when I think of Celebration and I think of you, Dave, there's one specific event that I think of. Not that one. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about that one publicly. Another one. Back in 2007, and people have been talking about the original Celebration Europe lately, just I've noticed on social media, because people are so fond of that event. Talk people through. People that don't know, one, don't know the legend of Dave Tree, and don't know of the things that you've done. One of the best things you've ever done, not that we can talk about, is the Palatoy Archive. Give people a little bit of info on the Palatoy Archive, how it came together and what it was all about.
For the first Celebration Europe, I was approached to create content for the show that would be unique to that event. The first Celebration Europe was kind of done differently to how they're done now, where it is a licensed show handled by Reed Pop. Back then, for that first one, and again, to kind of put it into context, it was the first time it had ever been held outside the United States. It was almost sub-managed by a third party. You had, back in 2007, a celebration going on at the same time. So I think it made sense to kind of have the incumbent team work on the US-based celebration and then for the first European one, have another team working on it, almost side by side but simultaneously. Because that year you literally had Celebration stateside and then Celebration Europe. The third party got in touch saying, we're trying to come up with a few ideas for content for the event to make it stand out on its own 2 feet and not be seen as like a smaller version or a watered down version of what's going on in the States, because people who are making both those trips may draw comparisons and go, well, this is not good. So there was a need to kind of create new content for it. So I said, yeah, I'll be up for that. Let me do something about, because it was the 30th anniversary, I'll do something about the original toy releases. And whilst it was originally Celebration Europe, I chose to do Palatoy, which were the guys who originally distributed the vintage toys in the 70s and 80s in the UK, to do like a toy exhibit. Now, the original premise was to work alongside Hasbro because it was the 30th anniversary, and the idea was that this was like a toy exhibit that you walk through of this is where Star Wars came from, and then this is where it is now, and then you're walking into the Hasbro bit. Things changed along the way, and then it was like a standalone exhibit in itself, and it was great fun. It was a daunting task because I hadn't fully appreciated that. I thought all this stuff would be fairly easy to access, and to kind of put it into kind of context, there was not, at that point in time, there was no one person in the UK who had all the toys. So what was actually being shown at the show was the amalgamation of about 4 different collectors. So there was nobody who had the complete run. That's kind of how bonkers it is to then try and make sure you got every box ticked and things like that. And even then, we only did what is called the debut product. So not like the reissue. So if you think of Darth Vader as an example, he was produced on a Star Wars card, then an Empire Strikes Back, and a Return of the Jedi, and so on and so forth. It was just literally their debut, their debut packaging that we exhibited. It was like a walkthrough exhibit with like a history of loads of awesome stuff to see, some rare things like toy shop displays and adverts running and things like that. And it was a huge hit. It was a complete nightmare to do. There was a lot of blood, sweat and tears, but then there was a lot of sweat that went into it over the weekend because I was giving my personal guarantee that, everything's going to be fine and all of that. But what it enabled that first show to do was have content that was completely unique and hadn't been seen anywhere else. So yeah, it was great. It was great fun. I didn't really get to experience Celebration to the same degree as an average punter would, because I was having to sort of man that. But one of the best things to come out of it was I met you. Because
it must have been a lousy show if that was the best thing to come out of it.
Well, no, because I remember it was, queuing up. I was wearing the exhibit T-shirt because we had all these crew T-shirts that utilised the Boba Fett Bounty Hunter logo from the Mail Away promotion, and you just went, oh yeah, that's a cool T-shirt. And then we got talking, and then the penny dropped that holy cow, I know you, because we used to talk years and years ago.
That's right.
And then I just remember you turning around, going, Louis, because Louis was there as well. Who back at that point in time, you both sort of manning lightsaber.
Yeah.
In the late 90s and that. Yeah, that was a real crazy moment. It was good fun.
I've still got huge fondness for that event though. Just as a show, I think for me, I know you and Matt and a lot of other people were doing a lot of shows in the sort of 2000s and going back to the 90s. I mean, for me, I used to do a lot of sort of more mixed sci-fi shows, and obviously I'm into my Trek, so I used to go a lot of Trek and Babylon 5 and stuff like that in the 90s. That's what I was doing. But to go to a monster Star Wars show like that, and like you say, meet yourself and meet so many other people, and exhibiting there as lightsaber, even though they put me on a booth. This is weird. We should have been in the fan area, but because we've got Gerald Home on our table signing for charity and giving us a significant portion of what he raised towards the charity we were raising for at the time, adrenal cortical cancer, which was very cool of him to do. They put us in a different area, so they basically put us in with all the dealers, and a dealer never turned up, and I think they were called, it was something weird like Angels and Demons or something like that. So our booth was it didn't say lightsaber, it said Angels and Demons, but behind us we had this great big lightsaber pull-up. I'd bought myself the Ben Kenobi the Force FX lightsaber, and so people thought we were literally selling lightsabers. It's like, no, they're on the Hasbro booth. We're a fan site, Now we just met, that's when I met Paul Bateman for the first time, and just so many different people. It was an amazing event.
It was. Nothing like it had ever been done over here at that point. It's kind of weird to kind of talk about it because I think we take it all totally for granted, but up to that point there was so much almost like reservation amongst the dealers because effectively all the cool stuff was around back then, and I chose not to be a dealer at the show because I was doing like the toy exhibit. Even right up to the week before, I remember we were at an event. I think it was one of the race courses, not Sandown, but it was around about there. Yeah. And I remember, because there's people from the garrison there, and I was with Nick Roach from Three Daffs. He was at the event, and I remember people kind of like, I hope it's going to be okay, Nick, and all this kind of stuff. There was like this kind of like, well, you might have wasted your money. And then at the end of it, like everybody just blew out. Like, it was just like absolutely, it was like completely unprecedented, and I remember seeing Darren Simpson from Star Zone Toys. He was just kind of like in a daze afterwards, and several other people. No one expected it to be as nuts as it was, and it was so great because it was just like full on adrenaline the whole weekend. It was amazing. So
but it was all the after parties as well. It was like, we would go up to the Novotel where Bonnie Burton and Tom Hodges and all the artists were sort of hanging out, and Kenny Baker was sitting there I always say he was sitting there nodding off. He got a glass of red wine, and it looked like he was balancing a bucket on a stick because it was just going left, right as he was nodding off. And then he'd wake up and have a little drink, and Sansweet was up there, but there was stuff happening everywhere. We met in the Fox, if I remember. That's where we met, wasn't it? And there's all these different places, and just so many cool little memories and stories. And I think for the UK scene as well, and for people who were around then and still around now, you kind of think back to that first celebration as being something so special. Not that the second celebration in 2016 wasn't, which I'm sure we'll get to, but that first one was just something else.
Was that your first celebration full stop, or had you done some state ones?
I look back and I think, why didn't I do it? Because in 99 I was determined to be in the States for when Phantom came out, and I knew all about celebration because I used to get the insider back in the day, But me and my friend Paul, who we've been doing Star Wars stuff together since we were little kids, we decided to do like a California drive-in tour. So we saw Phantom in Vegas and then just went back every 3 years. But of course 99, 2002, 2005 when the films came out was also the first three celebrations. So but we never did it. We always did this Vegas trip for some reason, so which was very cool to have seen the opening nights of those three films in the States. But I think back now and I think, I really probably should have done Celebration instead, looking at it, because it would have been an amazing experience. And I think Matt did, was it Celebration 3 Matt did? Matt and Richard Mitchell went out to do one of those.
Yeah, I think he did the Revenge of the Sith one.
Yeah.
I think that was Indianapolis.
Yep. I know Brian did Japan and he's done quite a few when you look at it. So between us as a team, we've been to quite a few, but we can't not talk about Celebration and not mention the caravan that we did back in 2013, which was like a trip and a half. I mean, thinking back again, that's 6 years ago now, which doesn't seem like 5 minutes. It's about 2 shirt sizes ago, I know that. But, you look back and you think, we drove down to the ferry, we got the ferry over, we drove through France and Belgium, Holland and Germany, and we've got Jeremy Bullock with us. That ain't going to be replicated, is it?
That was a real treat, and that was orchestrated by James. I was very privileged to be part of the team, and it was like yourself, James, Matt, and I with Jeremy and Maureen. For me, the fondness of that was just the terrific weather. It was sweltering hot, but it was just brilliant sunshine, from the UK and then going through France up to... Did we do Luxembourg, then Belgium?
No, we did. We drove into France, so northern France, stopped with the French garrison, or rather met it with the French garrison. We went into Belgium and met with the Belgian garrison at the Atomium, which was mind-blowingly cool. Because I always remember as a kid, my granddad had a set of playing cards, and on the back of the playing cards was the Atomium. So it was one of these things I'd always seen, but never really cottoned on how big it was or what it was. And being in the top of that and having the view of the city was amazing. Holland, of course, went to Amsterdam, did the Neon Museum, walked down the river and all that, so that was pretty special. And then into Germany, so everything about it was awesome. Oh, the Caves of Han. That's a memory to remember.
To kind of like help anybody who's trying to like sort of make sense of what we're talking about, this journey route had us stopping off at places that had a loose tie or theme to anything that's Star Wars. So the caves of Han Solo. When we were in Amsterdam, we went to the museum of, I forgot, but it was like fluorescence, so it was kind of like lightsabers and stuff like that.
Yep.
And the guy who ran that was really wild.
He was a proper California hippie. He was in
yeah.
San Francisco. He was there in the 60s, and he moved over probably in the late 60s, early 70s.
And I don't think he's actually ever moved from that time period either, because he was really kind of indicative of that.
That's a very polite way of putting stoned out of his mind. That's a really subtle way of putting it, man.
He was great. It was a lot of fun, but it was just like terrific weather. It was like a really cool road trip, and then running the booth at Germany as well.
Well, my memory of the booth, because you manned that booth and worked that booth like crazy, but my body memory of that booth is trying to fit that Santa Fe maybe 4 inches either side, and I managed to get it in there over that line. I don't know how I did that.
I mean, it's like there's the odd bead of sweat going, please don't bump it, please don't bump it. But no, you did it, you managed it.
So if you had to look back at your celebration experience so far, and of course Chicago is going to be the most awesome and the best without doubt, what would you say would be your peak moment, your peak celebration moment so far?
That's quite a tricky one to kind of call, because I can't really say it was any one moment. It sounds very kind of cheesy, but it is actually the opportunity to meet people that you haven't actually been able to physically meet in roundabout ways. So mentioned that got to meet yourself back in 2007. And
sorry about that.
But we'd been talking since like late 90s, early 2000s, like literally not so much putting names to faces, but like literally you're all there for the same reason. And like that to me is what's great. And the friends that you make from like these events, they do stick with you. Like, so from Germany, I've got loads of friends from like Mint and Box. They've all come from being at that same place at that same point in time, and it to me that really genuinely is quite special. I'm really looking forward to Chicago because I'll get to see Jeremy Beckett, and Jeremy and I go way back. He now lives in Australia, and if he hears this, which he won't, but it'll just it'll just have such a big head about it because I give him stick all the time. Yeah. But genuinely, I don't get to see the guy. So I'll be able to see him for the first time. Well, I saw him a couple of years ago, but it'd be twice in 10 years. And it's like, to me, that's great. It's stuff like that. I can't really say it was like meeting anybody, because my experiences have always been very different to the average punter. So for the last London show, I was running a stand, which was effectively for showmasters selling all their Star Wars collectibles and stuff like that. They needed someone to kind of like sort of run that. So again, I didn't do the last London one as a punter. Every time I do these things, I don't get to go to the panels. I don't get to meet the guests and things like that. So really for me, it's the interaction with friends and colleagues and like-minded people, because they're passing by wherever I am, and being able to like sort of catch up and talk there. So really for me, that is genuinely the value. I really, really love to engage with folks. Yeah. And I think that's like the coolest thing. I mean, from your side of things, I mean, your experience has changed over the years, because each time and now for this one, what you're doing is incredible. Like, it's genuinely bonkers what you're having to do for Chicago, and it's kind of like, oh wow, like make way for Lord Newbold, red carpet and all this sort of stuff. But like but your interaction.
I take the corridors at the back of the Albert Hall. I don't walk down the main door.
but like your experience is different and is always changing as well. I think you're gonna have a very different take on this one because of you're running the whole podcast stage, which is just brilliant. But like, do you have a standout moment yourself over the last however many that you've done?
I'm very similar to you. It's because fandom is kind of an ethereal thing. So much of it's run on social media or message boards or that kind of arena, if you like. And us as Fanta Trackers, we're lucky. I mean, you and me live 3 hours apart, but we catch up pretty regularly, considering, and the rest of the team, there's always a couple like, Matt and Martin were together this week, and and the MCM's coming up, so there's a few of us at MCM, and there's a few of us in the Midlands. We catch up for a meal every few weeks. We're lucky in the sense that we do actually get to meet. But to your point, there's people like, I've never met Jeremy Beckett. I speak to him occasionally online, and you always have a good laugh and a bit of banter at various things. But it's going to be cool to actually meet him and put a face to the name, sort of thing. And other people the same. And you mentioned Pierre and the guys from Mint in Box. It's always nice to bump into them. I last saw them at the Last Jedi premiere. It's always cool to see them. So yeah, it's a similar thing. It is bumping into people, meeting people, and having those experiences. But I think if I had to pick a moment, one specific single moment, it would probably be the 40th anniversary panel when the curtain dropped and John Williams was there and they played the Princess Leia's theme, and I was with Big Kev, and just I lost it. I was crying like a baby. So quite happy to admit, it just got to me. And there have been a few moments at Celebration like that. The first play of the Force Awakens trailer. The Chewie at home moment, that just got to me like nobody's business.
Everybody I spoke to on that was the same. They've all openly said, it was like literally like tears and things like that. I mean, for the last celebration, you saying that, because I was in here watching the live stream that was going out on YouTube, because it was a Saturday and it was peeing down with rain outside. So there's like literally no one's coming into the shop, like forget it. You might as well just go home. But I was here. I had the live stream on. I did actually really well up with the Carrie Fisher tribute that was there. It's like, my God, that's really pulling on the heartstrings.
That brought it home.
If you were actually there, it must be like a meltdown. Everybody's like literally like losing it.
But don't you find though, that's the beautiful part of fandom is a very loose catch-all phrase, and there's good bits and bad bits, and it's the same with every collection of fans of anything, football, music, whatever. But don't you find when fandom or the experience, let's put it that way, the experience is at its best, and you can be in a room with 2,000 other people and look around at complete strangers with tears running down your face and not feel like a bit of a fool. You just go, I know why you're feeling that. You know why I'm feeling it. It's all slightly different because everyone's got a different experience, but we're sharing it. And I love the moments when you feel like you're sharing it. So they're the bits that stand out for me, and I'm really hopeful that Chicago, not that I'm intending to blub like a baby, but I'm hoping that there's moments.
You will be by the end of it.
I'm sure something will happen that will bring me to tears. Probably stub my toe. But something will happen to Chicago. We'll come back and go, that was a bit special.
Hello, I'm Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
You've alluded to podcast stage. Making Tracks actually have a show on the podcast stage, and I would be remiss not to mention that you and me, Dave, Making Tracks lives Sunday 4 till 4:45 on the podcast stage. We've got to think what we're going to talk about. Brian is the prep guy, isn't he? Brian likes to get things planned and organised. We need these organisational people in our lives, and Brian is the daddy of the group, and Claire's the mummy of the group. And so we've got these people organising us like cats being herded. But I don't yet know what we're going to talk about. I prefer to just make it up. That's just my nature. But
there's the magic, guys.
Oh yeah, it's all just pulled out of the ether. So we are on the podcast stage. So we have Making Tracks is on the podcast stage. One other thing to mention, amongst many of us have new shirts. Have you seen the new shirts? We're not going to tell anybody, but we have new shirts, and they look freaking awesome. So there's new shirts.
Hang on.
Yes.
Let's just rewind. We got the same shirts, they're just in different colours.
Yes.
So don't confuse the public.
Confuse myself. How can I guarantee not confusing the public?
We haven't changed anything. We've expanded on
I've definitely expanded.
Fashion. Yeah, well, you look very natty in your new
threads.
Yeah. I got to say, I was very impressed.
I'm glad you noticed. New shirts, same logo, so you'll recognise us in a crowd. That's the whole point, but we look very natty. So, Making Tracks on the podcast stage, we've got new shirts. Tell us, Dave, a little bit about the booth. There's stuff going on the booth. There's things happening. Give us a bit of an insight, because you are our booth manager. What's your name, by the way? That's you're the big cheese.
I'm the big boob. Fantha Tracks are very fortunate to have a presence at Celebration Chicago, and we will be running a booth over the 5 days and giving it a little bit of a theme along the lines of the 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace.
Yes.
It's crazy to think that it's been 20 years since Jar Jar Binks and Little Annie and even Jira burst into our lives.
Storm's coming up, Annie. You better get home quick.
Well, they're the prequels. So yeah, it's been 20 years, and yet we still kind of, in some respects, are quite derogatory towards these things. And I think that needs to change.
Yeah.
They might not necessarily be your favourite stories, but you probably can look back now at how that anticipation, how that made you feel. That in itself is nostalgia, especially after 20 years now. It was a crazy event leading up to it. We're kind of marking that as the main theme of our booth. We'll have a couple of things running all the time, but primarily we have a giveaway that we'll be doing every day. Do you think we could talk about that, Mark?
I think we should talk about it because as we speak, like I say, as we speak, there's 21 days till the show kicks off. So we need to let all the people know all the cool stuff that we're going to have on the booth, as well as yourself, Dave. So yeah, go for it. Tell people about all the wonderful things that we've got.
All right. So mentioned we're going to be celebrating 20th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, and to help mark that, we have got a giveaway each day of a Phantom Menace themed postcard featuring all new artwork by comic artist Nick Brokenshire. He's been very kind in creating 4 character postcards for us, and we'll be giving those away. There's only 1,000 sets of these available, so 1,000 complete sets, and you'll get a different postcard each day. Now, you'll be able to procure these in a number of different ways, but it will all be about demonstrating that you follow Fantha Tracks on a relevant social media platform. So there'll be a different one each day.
Yeah,
if
MySpace does not count. MySpace does not count.
If you don't use that particular social media platform, don't worry. You'll then be able to take part in a game that we've got devised. We've trialed this at the last Fantha Day. It's Play Your Cards Right, which is known as a different game show in the States, but effectively deck of cards, and we've got them themed towards Phantom Menace characters, and you got to go along the line and see if the following card, you got to guess if it's going to be higher or lower than
Dave, I've got a question. Who's dressing up as the dolly dealer?
That won't be me, unfortunately, because I will be running another part of the booth, which will be all about the toys of the Phantom Menace. So we spoke about the Palatoy archive earlier in the episode. One of the areas of interest that I have is all to do with the toys of the Phantom Menace. Because again, a phenomenal amount of merchandise was created for this, the very first prequel. But also, there was an awful lot of stuff that never actually made it into full production. So the theme of that part of the booth will be the unproduced toys of episode 1, or the Phantom toys. And this will be a rotating display, so different things shown each day of toys that were very, very close, or products very, very close to literally being launched, but for one reason or another, the plug was pulled on them, or retailer support was changed. Give people a bit of an insight into some of the other products that were on the table back then. We all mistakenly associate the Phantom Menace with overproduction of stuff, and yeah, to a degree there was a little bit of that went on, but that doesn't mean that we got everything that was, they slapped the branding and the label on it. There was an awful lot of stuff that never actually quite got there. So I'll be running that. We'll also be having a little area to do various interviews and recordings for our various different channels, from Fantha TV to podcast interviews and things like that. And you'll get to meet the rest of the team as well, where Fantha Tracks as a whole is out in force. You'll be able to get to meet the other members of the Fantha Tracks team throughout the 5 days at the Fantha Tracks booth as well. So, want to come and meet us? Me personally, I want to meet you. If you listen to the show, I want to meet all 3 of you. Pop on over. It'd be a pleasure to talk you through some of the toy displays. Even play your cards right. And it's bugging me what the American version is called, but it is known by another name there. But when you see it, you'll get the gist of it straight away. And like I said, we got a cool giveaway as well. So we are literally at Celebration Chicago in full force from the point of view of the booth, with the content that we're doing, giveaways, podcasts, and all the other activities that the other folks are doing. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. I've got a lot of work that I still need to do running up to it, particularly for like the toy side of things, because I've got to like do like all the annotation and work out how I'm going to transport it all. But it's quite exciting. It's quite cool.
Well, we both have other things that we're doing, things within the show that we're doing, which we can't talk about quite yet. It's not been announced, but we both have other things that we're doing. So they're bubbling along quite nicely.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about those.
No.
God, there's even more work we got to do. Oh, man.
And hopefully by the next show, because we will have another show out before Celebration, we definitely will, to wrap everything up so everybody knows what's going on. There is the 501st Clubs Bash, the Canto Bite event that's happening on the Thursday night.
Thursday night. Yeah. Get tickets.
So, exactly, get your tickets. And I know they're selling out like hotcakes, so if you haven't already, get moving because they're going really quick. So I know some of us will be there for that. There is also a podcast get-together. The podcast stage have decided that they want to have a nice get-together. Podcasts from the stage and other podcasts all meeting up at the Arc Bar at the Hyatt Regency, which is at McCormick Place. So that's on the evening of Saturday the 13th. So there'll be a whole bunch of people there for that. So that'll be a good laugh. I don't think we could hope to capture everything that we've got to do, but we will collate and make sure that we let everybody know what's happening by the next show, so it's all nailed down and detailed.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fant the Tracks fan.
Now, before we move into another conversation and go off at a random left turn like we always do, the news has come out now, the release dates, or rather the launch dates, or the opening dates even, of Galaxy's Edge. In Anaheim, it is the 31st of May, and in Orlando, it's the 29th of August. So those parks are going to be open. They're going to be ridiculously packed, obviously. What are your thoughts? Because one of the rumours and one of the hot takes is that the Ride of the Resistance ride will not be opening when the parks open. Do you think it's a mistake to open the parks without that being ready for people to see and get into? Or do you think it's a smart bit of business to do, essentially like a soft opening just to see where the flow of people go and just build up quietly? What do you think on that?
I don't think it's anything deliberate. I mean, nobody wants to not have everything open and ready at the point and launch, but I don't think you can postpone things when everything else is there, because this whole thing's cost money, and if one ride or certain features aren't ready, that shouldn't be the reason to not get it all. If something's fallen behind on that, you can't really fall behind on anything else, because this is one cog in a massive machine within that park. They just got to go with it. So at least they've kind of owned up to it from that point of view and set that expectation where you can. I know it's not everyone's necessarily happy about that, but like, better you kind of know in advance than not at all. I don't think it's necessarily an insidious thing to like get you to come back and do 2 visits, and I don't necessarily think that it's like a soft launch to kind of iron out any of the creaks, because if anybody knows how to control crowds and movements and things like that, it's those guys. They've been doing it for decades. They know how to operate these things. Yeah, it's going to be busy. There always are. It doesn't matter what opens up. It's always crazy for those first year or whatever, because it's all brand new. It's another reason to go back and visit. So I don't see that there's anything wrong there. From my perspective, the coolest thing about it is you got Hondo there. They put up that video of like the animatronic Hondo, and Hondo is my favorite character from like the Clone Wars, and when they brought him back into Rebels, for me that was like a huge win. And to then see him get featured here, it's like further legitimizing that character more within the universe of Star Wars. He's not kind of like, that's it, his story's over, from like Clone Wars to Rebels. It's like, no, he's now a fixture within this. Could that lead on to other stuff in one form or another? And like, first time you've kind of seen him in a non-animated aspect as well. And that is interesting as well, because would I be right in saying he's the first Clone Wars character to be kind of almost a live action scenario?
I don't think you'd be wrong. I can't think of another one, and I'm sure our 3 listeners will correct us if we're wrong. But I think it probably is. Yeah.
Because I can't think of, say, like you had the cameo verbally of Quinlan Vos in Revenge of the Sith if you see what I mean, if you see where I'm going with this.
Yep.
You've had like sort of like verbal references. Oh, I suppose Chopper in Rogue One.
Yeah, from Rebels. Yeah. And Hera gets a shout out. But yeah, I know what you're going with that. Yeah, I think to physically make it, then yeah, probably right.
That to me is quite interesting and very cool. And great that they kind of like put in that kind of element to it. I think that's like really, really quite cool.
Well, we were lucky a couple of episodes ago we had Amy Ratcliffe come on who'd actually done like a press tour of it, and it's still far from complete, and even now it's tightening it up and finishing it, and they haven't stocked it yet because obviously there's all the various shops and outlets are going to be busy, and there's a lot of food outlets as well and retail places. But she gave us a great insight into the park, and one of the things that struck me was that as you walk in, you feel very much, or you will feel very much like you're in a significant sized outpost, but not in the sense of when you walk to Hogwarts, you see the castle and it's a big boom impact, and then you get into the nitty gritty of like Diagon Alley and various other areas and see different aspects of the Potter world. But to go to this, you are walking through the streets and you do feel like you're within the environment. So as much as going on the rides, which of course I think everyone's looking forward to the rides, that's not the main reason I want to go to Galaxy's Edge. It's just to be in there and feel the ambience and feel like I'm walking through a Star Wars location.
Definitely. It is really exciting and great that it's like rolling out across a couple of different venues as well. It's not like it's just in this one spot. I know people have been kind of not necessarily the happiest about things, and talking, like it's like VIPs and rides aren't ready and things like that. But like, it's not going to diminish your enjoyment. If you got to go to that thing, you're still going to love it.
And it's there for the long haul, isn't it? That's the point.
Yeah.
It's going to be there in 10 years' time. So,
And the investment that's been made into it. Star Tours sat there for a good 30 years. And whilst it had like updates to the actual theme inside the ride, it's like an installation in itself. And like, this is so cool. I have no plans to go visit, but if I get the opportunity, you bet I'm going to like go check it out. Just such a cool thing to actually get. It's the one thing that I remember when the Disney thing was takeover was announced, everybody said, oh my God, it's going to be like Star Wars land. Shortly after, Mickey Jedi is going to be on absolutely everything, which if anything is actually the other way round. He's now been taken off everything. That was always kind of like, wow, does this mean we're going to get like Star Wars land? And this is as close as you're going to get to that. It's super cool.
I think also people, collectors, we know plenty of collector friends who try and get as much as they can. I'm thinking Duncan Jenkins is certainly one who tries to get a bit of everything. He must have seen the announcements of Galaxy's Edge and all the product that's coming out, and his heart must have sunk because there's so much stuff.
I'm hoping that they keep a little bit of tribute going with Star Tours and then have kind of like, themed outfits and stuff like that, with the blue and orange and black jumpsuits and stuff like that, because I thought that was really cool. We'll have to wait and see.
So that's it for our 18th episode of Making Tracks. We will be back before Celebration Chicago, so we will be back within the next couple of weeks. And you and me, Dave, will be back talking the wars and all sorts of nonsense before Celebration Chicago. I can't wait. I'm so excited for this show. And I'm so excited that Cannon Fodder, we now have a new show on the network, along with Making Tracks, along with the Panther from Down Under. We now have Cannon Fodder. That is Brian Cameron, back with a vengeance, with Matt and myself, talking about comics and books and all sorts of literature stuff. We did a first episode last month. It went down really, really well. Can't wait to do the next one. Before I launch into telling people where they can find us on social media, Dave, where can people find you?
Normally, you will be able to find me in the deepest, darkest New Forest at All the Cool Stuff, which is the shop that I run in Fordingbridge, Hampshire. Come down anytime, say hello. Or you can find me online on social media, either at All the Cool Stuff or Farthest From, which is the show that we run, and also Fantha Tracks TV on YouTube. So just literally Fantha Tracks, of which there is some amazing content that's been pumped out over the last few weeks. If you don't subscribe to Fantha Tracks TV already, get yourself on there. In many cases, there's expanded content from some of the things that we talk about on Making Tracks with like interviews, but like in terms of reviews, it is the go-to because pretty much every Hasbro release, Martin's on there, like Quick Smart, and then there's a few other little insights and bits and bobs in there as well. So go check that out. But if I'm like looking to find myself, who the guru and the master of the podcast stage at Celebration Chicago, where can I find you, Mark?
Well, assuming you would be looking for me, which
Always.
I'm kind of hinting that you might be, you can find me on Twitter at prefect_timing. You can email me at mark@fantatrax.com, and always noodling around in the back end of the site, which always sounds wrong, but I know what I mean. But if you want to find us on the podcast, or you want to find Making Tracks, you can contact any of the shows. So that's Cannon Fodder, Making Tracks, The Panther from Down Under, and there are other shows coming very, very soon, one of which will be launching at Celebration Chicago. We've just come up with the name for it. It will be announced very shortly. You can email us at radio@fantatracks.com, or you can comment on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, or Tumblr. It's all at Fantatracks. But if you want to find this very podcast and the other shows that we have on the network, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Android, Spotify, SoundCloud, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker. We're also on smart speakers as well, such as Amazon Alexa, Apple HomePod, Google Home, and Sonos.
Wow.
You can play us in your car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I've learned all this off by heart.
I was
not
going to
reading
say
it.
you're doing good.
This is all from memory. You can get us on your gaming console and on your television. You can find us on Fantatracks TV, which of course we stream on there as well, and the Fantatracks app. For all the details on how to listen in and subscribe, check out our dedicated page on Fantatracks. It's called Fantatracks Radio. You'll see it in the little toolbar at the top. Click on that. All the info you need for whatever device or whatever way you want to listen to us, it's in there. We don't yet do Yoga Pots and String, but it's coming. So that's episode 18 before I completely frazzle out. Dave, thank you as always. We will see you for the next episode, and already I cannot wait.
Equally.
Storm's coming up, Annie. You better get home quick.